Hello participants, welcome to the topic 4 of our course Petroleum Production and Processing PETR1131 and today the topic 4 we'll discuss on the production. So the last topic we actually we have covered drilling part. So right after drilling we have the production. Okay, so you can watch the YouTube video, the link, and you can have a little quick ramp up with the exploration and the drilling, what we have covered so far. So we can just have a small review on that. Now let's talk about the production. So what production actually involves? Production involves preparing the borehole. Okay, so remember the keywords: preparing the borehole for the production, okay, bringing the fluids to the surface. So for instance, this is the reservoir, okay. We got gas, oil, and water, and here is the surface. So we have to take this oil or the gas to the surface. So by creating this borehole, okay, so creating the hole in here, we call it borehole, and separating formation fluids into oil, gas, and water streams for quantity and quality measurement. That means like the oil actually we got from here, so there is some portion of gas could mix and a portion of oil could mix, water could mix in the oil too. Okay, so the reservoir fluids initially we got, it's a mixture of gas plus oil and some portion of water, so we need to separate it in different unit, okay, oil and water, and these two we actually sell commercially. The water we just weigh out. Okay, so this is production involves this part. Now well completion, we know already about the well. So here let's review again. So at the initial stage, what we do, the first stage we prepare the field. Okay, here is the field, and then we put the largest diameter of casing, which is the conductor casing, this one. Okay, so we put this conductor casing, and after we putting the conductor casing, then we put the cements. Okay, cements to stabilize the ground. Okay, after that we put the surface casing, which is a smaller diameter than the conductor casing. Okay, and when we put the surface casing, after that again we put the cementing, okay, to make it more stable, and then we drill again, and when we reach a certain depth, then we actually put the intermediate casing, which is narrower, than the surface casing, and of course narrower than the conductor casing for sure. So we put the casing, and again what do? We did the cementing again, right? And finally, when we actually reach to the reservoir, at that point we actually put the final one, the production casing, and then we put the cementing to make the stabilize, and after that we put the production pipeline. Okay, and this casing, it's mostly what's happened. This casing actually looks like this. I mean the production casing actually, and it got some holes inside. Why it got holes, we'll actually learn later slides, like why the casing got holes. Like the conductor casing, it don't get any holes, okay, but the production casing and the tubes actually send the tubes inside, so it got the holes. Why? We'll actually learn that the later slides. Like here, when we actually put the tubes inside, okay, this is the production zone, like zoomed this area. Okay, if you zoom this area, then it comes in here. So if there is no open hole completion, okay, so no production casing or lining set through the pay zone, I mean we don't put the production casing here, we just put like this our tubes inside, okay, and oil and gas actually comes in, it comes through there. But the thing is, actually this is very ancient way of doing that. It's like you have the reservoir, okay, and you just put the pipeline and it comes inside. So this, like, I mean, the most ancient way, but now we don't use this much actually, because it's limited to consolidate reservoir without risk of collapse, okay. But the I mean, it's very the old one types. But mostly what we do actually right now, we actually use the completion type like this perforated, okay. So the production casing or lining, it got this perforated, that means holes, okay, as I showed you in here, right? So these holes. Now what is the function of these holes? The function is like, for instance, here if you see, the only way the fluids actually can enter just this channel, okay. Now if this channel has been clogged by some darts or by some rock, for instance, or by anything, then what do you do? I mean, the production would be hampered, right? But these perforations, like these small holes at him, so the more openings are in here, okay, so the maximize you can opening, the more fluids can enter, right? So that's why this is very important. And there's some other things we actually do, we utilize for the enhanced recovery. I will show you like how we do the enhanced recovery, but these perforations are very important, okay. So connection the reservoir made by perforating holes into the casing, right? Now the tubing, what is tubing? So this is the production casing. That means like the from this hole, this oil and gas actually comes through, the reservoir fluid actually comes through here, and then we have to take it to the a tube, a pipeline, okay. So the pipeline actually attach inside, okay, that we call the tubing. So smaller pipe run inside along the production casing. And what it do actually, it's the connection reservoir. I mean, the tubeless, it is the connection to the reservoir is made by perforating hole into the casing, and it saves time and money instead of running the tubes, okay. So now the tubing glass is way more popular than the tubing actually, okay. Now it could create corrosion, right, but I mean, but there are so many, I mean, other advantages, okay. So that actually we use that, and for that reason actually we take preventive measures for the corrosion, okay. I mean, if there's a presence of sulfur in the reservoir, that could actually prevent the corrosion, or hydrogen sulfide, I mean any kind of like sulfide components. So we actually take preventive measures for that. Now this is how the tubings and the packers actually it would be upside down, like the surface casing would be at the top, okay. So how it actually works, this is the surface and this is the reservoir. So the surface casing actually is like that, and then we put the intermediate casing and then the production casing, and then the tube inside, okay, runs through that. So this is the tube actually looks like, okay. So this tube actually is not cemented because we need to do ups and down the tube, but these casings are cemented for sure, right? These casings are cemented but not the tube, because we need to take it out sometime, move it back, okay. So easily removed if damaged or corroded, okay. And also used to convey the pumps and artificial life device into the packers, okay. So what are the packers? So the tubing can be sealed at the bottom, okay, using the packers. So how is like that? These are the packers, all right. So this is the tube, and tubing can be sealed at the packers. Why? This is the question. Why you should actually do that? Why you should actually seal the tube with these packers? It is because it can protect the production casing from high pressure. You know the kick. Well, sometimes actually this, as you know, like I mean here, this oil and gas, whatever the reservoir fluids, whatever is in there, is in very high pressure, very high pressure. Okay, sometimes it is exceed like 10,000 to 20,000 psi, which is very high. Okay, Now, at this pressure, all of a sudden, if the fluid release, then what will be happen? Just like the can of Coke or like the bottle of champagne, it will overflow, or it will actually do the kicks. So or even blow out in worst case scenario. So to we don't want that, and to prevent this we actually use the packers. Okay, so it's a kind of initial control with that. So the tubing can be sealed at the bottom using the packers and protection from the high pressure simulation treatment, and also like the exposure of fluid. Okay, so it is a secure seal, and it can be used by the rubber elements or any other types. All right, now you can use multiple tubes and the multiple packers. For instance, your production casing is huge, is big. Okay, then you can actually put multiple tubes for multiple production. For instance, like the layers like of this. This is one of the layer of oil and gas, and then you get the sands, and this is another layer of the reservoir. This is another layer. So you want to put 3 tubes on the 3 layers. Okay, so what you can do, you can put a big production tube and production casing and 3 different tubes at the 3 different separate reservoirs. Okay, and then you can actually use the packers like that. Okay, so why we do that? Just imagine you need to drill 3 different holes. Instead of that, you just drill one big hole, and then you can actually produce your time. So it's more economic and it's more cheaper, right? But it is more complicated for the installation, of course, but it's less expensive to drill. That's exactly why we do that, right? Repairs that can take longer. Definitely the more risk, the more return, but sometimes we actually do these multiple completions because of the it's cheap. Now, for this reason, we actually use the safety valve. This is a kind of like a non-returning valve. Okay, so fluids can go in, but it cannot actually go out. Okay, number one. And also, if you actually want to seal the valve, the fluid also cannot actually go in. Okay, so that's how we can actually use the safety valve, the subsurface safety valve, doing for the. But these are initial safety measures, but the important safety measure is actually at the top. We use this. So wellhead. What is wellhead? Wellhead is all equipment on the surface that supports the pipe string, seal of well and control paths that control the path and flow rates of the fluid. Okay, so this is the wellhead, and this is one of the most important safety feature. Okay, casing head. What is casing head? Casing head is actually attached with the wellhead. Okay, and it is a heavy steel fitting at the surface from which each of the surface casing strings actually hang. That means this is, for instance, this is the wellhead. Okay, and here we got the casing head, and from the casing head it's a kind of things like that catch all the tubes. Okay, attach all the tubes with the casing head. Okay, Christmas tree. At the top of this wellhead, okay, we got the Christmas tree. Now I know the Christmas is in winter, but we have fall. The immediate celebration we're going to have is Halloween. But well, let's learn about what's the Christmas tree actually do. So the Christmas tree is the name of the tree. It's not the real Christmas tree like that. It's not this pine tree actually, but instead of that, it is a stack of valve like this. Okay, so what it does, it's not for the decoration, that's for sure. So what is for that? This is a kind of like a stack of valve to control the flow from the tubing. Just imagine here the fluid are in very, very high pressure. Okay, as I said, sometimes it's like 10 to 20,000 psi. Now, or all of your safety feature, if failed, for instance, the packer didn't work, this valve failed, then what you have to do, how you can actually prevent the blowout, that's actually would be done by the Christmas tree. Okay, so um, this is a pack of, the stack of valve. It got the main master valve, okay, just above the tube head, and the flow rate would be controlled, okay, by choke, okay, the restriction of the flow line. Now this is how a Christmas tree actually looks like, okay, so that's why its name is Christmas tree. Okay, like the pine, lots of like ornaments and decorations we have just like we put at the Christmas tree. Okay, so this is the Christmas tree, and this is the most important safety device we have. All right, initiating flow. Now the reservoir fluids, it flow through the pipe called the flow line to produce to the production facility. Okay, wells that do not produce enough reservoir pressure flow may need extra equipment or extra methods. We'll actually go through that the next slides. So this is a video you can watch if you want more information, and you can see the animation. Please watch this video. Okay, now we'll go to the next part, the second part of the production, to the continuation of the lecture. So now in this lecture, we'll actually talk about the well simulation technique, how this reservoir drive actually work, and the artificial lift. For instance, at the end of the lecture of the first one, you see like initiating flow. If the oil that do not produce enough pressure, then what we can actually do, okay, we can actually employ the artificial lift, or we sometimes call it EOR, enhanced oil recovery. Okay, we'll actually see. So artificial lift plus enhanced oil recovery it actually give more production. Okay, okay. Now the pump jack animation, please watch the video in here. So it's a reciprocating action that you can actually see how the pump jack actually works. Now let's talk about the reservoir drive mechanisms. Okay, so the basic fundamental fluid mechanics, let's talk about that. That is always fluid flow from higher pressure to a lower pressure. For instance, you've got a pipeline, okay, and this is the high pressure, this is the low pressure. So which direction fluid will flow? This direction. It can be explained like if you are familiar with the electrical system, what's happened, like if there is a circuit, okay, so if it's the high voltage and here it's called the low voltage, so the same thing, electricity always flow from higher to lower, we know that, right? It's the same exact similar principle we have here, the resistance, here the friction. That's how actually it works. Anyways, so in the reservoir is the same. For instance, here is the reservoir. We got oil, water, gas, oil, and water. And when it's in very high pressure, and at the surface is the lower pressure. So what's the natural thought? The natural thing is like the since it's in high pressure, so the reservoir fluids will automatically go out, and that's the logic actually do, right? But sometimes we cannot do that. Sometimes we can't do that because of this resistance here. Okay, so what would be the resistance in here? It could be like the fluid in here, like I'm not talking about the gas, I'm talking about the oil in here. It's too thick to move, or even the porosity is lower, okay, or there could be so many other things actually, especially like the if the density or the viscosity is very high, or if it's a solid like bitumen, okay, or the tar sand, for instance. In Canada, it's that we got lots of tar sand. So it's really hard to actually move it out, although there is a huge pressure in here, but still it's not sufficient to take it out. Okay, so for that reason, we sometimes actually need artificial lift or enhanced oil recovery. But for the normal flow, for instance, the oil in Saudi Arabia or Middle Eastern countries, those are like very the viscosity is very low, and that's exactly why you just need to dig a hole, it will come out automatically. Okay, so that's why the production cost is really cheaper in Saudi Arabian or like Middle Eastern those oils, and that's why sometimes they do the oil politics that we cannot actually do in Canada. Anyways, that's why they control the oil prices much more. They have more upper hand in controlling the oil and gas. But in case of Canada, Russia, or Venezuela, it's really hard for these countries to, or even like Norway. They have lots of offshore operations. They're kind of like stuck into the system. Actually, if the oil price is too high, it's really hard for them to price on. Recently probably you have observed what's actually happened with that with the world, right? So anyways, so this is how the fluid is actually move in. Now the longer the reservoir pressure is maintained, the longer the flow continue to well. Now when the reservoir pressure and the surface pressure is kind of like equilibrium, at that point the flow will be hampered, right? Now the first period in production of the oil is we call primary recovery, and in the first stage the natural energy causes fluids to flow. We call it reservoir drive mechanism. That is totally natural. We don't have to use any artificial lift or any enhanced oil recovery. Okay, so this is the natural drives. Okay, natural driving mechanism. Just one second, I just want to make sure like it's working properly. I think, yeah. This is the natural drive. So what are the natural drives? There are several types of natural drives. One is the depletion drive. Sometimes we call it gas drives also. Okay, remember that. Depletion drive or the gas drives. Okay, there's the water drive, the gravity drainage, and there's a combination. And most cases actually it happened the combination above, like combination of either all or combination of two. Okay, in most cases, but these are like the main drives. So let's talk about the depletion drive. So the more, you just imagine you have the reservoir, it is the gas, it is the oil, and it is the water. Okay, so you just dig the hole. So what will happen? What's happened, this natural gas and oil are in very compressed, right? In a very compressed phase. So what's happened, like since the just right now in here, when you actually put the line pipe in here, like the production line pipe in here, so the pressure at this point became the pressure like this surface. Okay, so but this is very high pressure and here is the low pressure. So what's going to happen? So the oil and gas and everything will be moving. Now when it actually moves, then what's happened? These natural gas were in very high pressure. Okay, so the reservoir under original pressure created by the depth and the geological process. Okay, so this pressure act to compress the rock and the fluid. But when you actually relieve the pressure, it starts expand. Okay, and the pressure decrease in reservoir. Okay, which cause the compressed fluid and reservoir expand itself, right? So for instance, it's compressed a lot and all of a sudden you are actually taking out of the oil. Then what's happened? It is getting more space and the oils and the gas is actually expanding even more. Okay, so this expansion keeps reservoir pressure from rapidly declining. Now here is the thing, both oil, gas and water all actually expand, including the rock, uh, but what's our logic says, like that we know that compressibility of gas is way higher than oil, water, and of course from the rock. right? So even though oil, water, and rock all actually expand, but gas actually expand in way more, better way. All right. So the expansion factor of gas is very high. Okay. So there is an expansion limit in the each part of the reservoir. Then the rock slightly expand, while an water expands slightly more than the rock. But however, gas expand even more. Now, there are two ways how gas can actually expand. One is the free gas from the gas cap, another is the dissolved gas in the oil. How it actually works. Um, if you see this picture, then you can see. Okay, so here is the gas cap. So the gas actually gives the pressure. The more you are actually withdrawing the oil, then what's happened? The more gas from the gas cap is giving the pressure from the top. Okay, and the more you are actually withdrawing the oil. So as you know, I actually covered the last lectures, like there's the portion of gas dissolves in the oil. Okay, these bubbles, just like a can of soda, just like the Coca-Cola or any other types of uh, can of pop. Okay, carbon dioxide is dissolved in there, but when you actually open it up, then what's happened? It creates the bubbles. Okay, exactly the same phenomenon actually happen inside. Okay, so when these gas bubbles are actually getting bigger due to the pressure is actually getting lower, so these gas bubbles actually getting bigger, then what's happened? These actually expand and create the pressure and the force, so the fluid actually go up. All right, so this is the two ways actually. So one is the gas cap drive, can do like 20 to 5% of the original place. Another, as I explained, the solution gas drives, okay, which might recover 10 to 15%. Okay, now gas reserves are also produced by depletion. So due to the low viscosity and flow efficiently, gas expansion alone might recover as much as sometimes 80% of the original gas in the place. Okay, so if you only have a gas, not oil, okay, just imagine there is no oil in here. Okay, no oil in here. So if you just want to produce gas, so the reservoir drive of only the gas will produce 80%, sorry, 80% you can recover, just only the gas. Okay, other 20% probably you need to use some different other techniques to recover it, but you can produce 80%. But gas is responsible for recovering oil up to 20 to 25% for the gas cap, and for the solution drive 10 to 15%. All right, so this is how actually it works. Water drive. Now, how this water can actually act, how this water can actually give the pressure. Okay, now just imagine this water is not ending here. It got a big aquifer. Aquifer is kind of like huge underground lake. Okay, you get a huge aquifers in here. So the more oil, for instance, this oil actually end in here. So the more oil you are actually taking out, it is creating vacuum. So what's happened? Like the waters will be coming in and filling up the gap, right? And that's how it will create a pressure from the ground, from the bottom actually. All right. So if it creates more pressure from the bottom, then you can actually have more oil naturally. It works. Okay, so this is called the water drive. Okay, it's also caused by the fluid expansion, and the water bearing part is the reservoir called the aquifer, causes the pressure in the formation above. Okay, so just exactly what I actually told you. So these are all the things I just explained, how the water actually works. So with the strong water drives, the recovery might reach 50 to 60% from the original water in place. Now, this water can actually work in a couple of different ways. For instance, it can give the pressure from the bottom. It totally depends on the geology of the reservoir. But for instance, if it's a salt dome or works like that, so the waters are from the side, it can give the pressure from the both of the sides, okay, and that's how actually you can do, or even like that, okay, just similar, like I mean the same way. So these are the ways actually how water create the drive. Now there is another natural drive actually, we call it gravity drainage. Now as we know that gravity got an effect on any kind of flow, although it is low, and also it totally depends on the geology of the drainage, but sometimes if you are lucky enough, you can have a steeply dipped reservoir where the down dip where the well is actually at the down dip, and the gravity cause oil to flow downhill. Well, how? um, let's imagine here there is a fault, okay. Now here you got the gas, here you got oil, here you got water, okay, and here is your production line. So what's happened, the more you are actually taking out the oil, the since it's the gravity actually works always downwards, right? So the more oil from the top will actually come to the bottom, and then it will actually help you to go out, okay. So it's actually works like a combination. I mean, it's not like only gravity drainage works a significant part, but of course like the gas cap and the water drive also works in a combination way, just like the sandwich, okay. So that's why we say, like, I mean, there's a combined effect of that, but it because it doesn't provide much pressure alone, but the recovery could be as high as 50%, but it is slow, as you know, like the gravity is a very slow process, okay. Now these are all the natural drives, okay, naturally how you can actually work the oil. Now for instance, after a certain fluid pressure, after a certain time, you cannot recover more. So what would be the next step, how you can actually recover again? So now the improved recovery techniques actually come in, okay. So a large amount of hydrocarbons may left in the reservoir at the end of the primary production phase if the improved recovery techniques cannot be taken. And also there are some reservoirs you cannot use the natural flow, like the natural depletion, okay. You cannot do that. For instance, the tar sand, as I explained before, okay. So you have to use improved recovery techniques. So what are the types of the techniques we have? We have the water flooding, we have the gas injection, we have the chemical flooding, we have the thermal recovery, okay. So this table is very, very important. Please go through that. I'm not going to line by line because I'm going to explain everything at the later slides, which is already in here, okay. But please go through this chart. It's very important chart. It's actually explained everything from the later slides, okay. It's in one page, so that's why it's very important. All right, so the water flooding, how it actually works. For instance, you have the oil. Now you don't have the aquifer nearby. What you can do, though, if you have water at the surface, you can just drill some holes, and you can flood the water. So it will exactly works just like this, okay, exactly like this. But here we're just inducing the water artificially, okay. Gas injection. This is a very interesting one. For instance, the same way, we don't have gas in here, but we want the gas pressure. How you can do that? You can actually drill another secondary hole in here and inject some gas. If you have the gas from the okay, you can inject the gas, and then you can actually the gas injection. For instance, you can inject carbon dioxide, or as you know, like the oil have natural gas, dissolved natural gas. Okay, now this dissolved natural gas, if it's not a sellable portion, or if you don't have uh, like a pipeline to sell the natural gas, what you can do, you can just vent it out, or you can use it for the recovery. You can just re-inject this natural gas, okay, or even the carbon dioxide, and then what you'll do, it will actually, this is the perforation tube, it will actually go out and push this oil, okay, and then this oil will go out. Okay, chemical flooding, water and surfactant. What is surfactant? Well, this is oil, and the surfactant is kind of like soap. Okay, similar, very similar to soap. Okay, so the surfactants, if you actually use the water and surfactant, then what's happened? The oil will actually push through in this way. Okay, and you can actually recover the oil. Thermal recovery, a very important one. We actually use a lot of thermal recovery and the chemical recovery also. I've been using the surfactants. This is the chemical flooding. We used that in our oil sands, but mostly we use this thermal recovery. Okay, for instance, infamous SAGD is a thermal recovery. Okay, or CCS is a thermal recovery. Okay, so what we do with the thermal recoveries? Well, put the steam, just like here we put the water and surfactants, but no, here we actually inject hot water or the steam, and what is do, if it is a bitumen, for instance, okay, or like highly viscous tar, then hot water will thin the oil. Okay, it will make it less viscous, and then it will move along. Okay, so that's how we actually use the utilize the thermal recovery. Okay, so you have to put two wells, one is the injection well and this is the producing well. Okay, so steam injection involves, that's why its name is steam assisted gravity drainage, SAGD. Okay, or so this is actually the SAGD video, steam injection, okay, or combined cyclic power, or CCS, steam emulsion. Watch this. We also use this in this process in Athabasca tar sand in here. This is the fire flooding. There is another one. Actually, we have that's called. What we do actually, another types of thermal recovery is we make a controlled combustion as a portion, okay, and that creates carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide actually, when we burn a portion, it actually pushed through the oil and gas inside, and then we recover. Okay, but now we use mostly like SAGD, which is more environmental friendly. Okay, now when the oil or the gas comes at the at the surface, then what? So the reservoir fluids which actually comes to the surface, it's a mixture. Okay, it's a mixture of oil, gas and water. Okay, now this mixture we need to separate. Okay, so the first thing we actually do is we actually put in the separator and we separate the oil and the water and the gas. Okay, so how we actually do that, and what we actually do, like for instance, the oil temporarily stored and tested for quality, then it's sold or transported to the refinery through pipeline. Okay, we call this gathering pipeline, and from there we actually transport it to the refinery. Gas is tested for the hydrocarbon content, and in most cases gas actually processed on field. Okay, if there is any impurities and things, then we can actually either compress it and enter to the pipeline to which it's sold, or we can actually convert it to LNG and put it in a tanker, and then we can sell it outside, just like the Qatar used to do that. Okay, and water, what we have, we can reuse it or send it to the disposal well for the water flooding. Okay, so these are the things actually we do when we actually separate the mixture of oil, gas and water. So this is the complete process. Please go through that. The later slides I will actually explain everything that is in here. This is again another very concise process of the steps actually we do with the oil and gas for the sale. Okay, now how you can actually separate the liquids from the gas? We can use this vertical separator. Okay, so it's a very simple operation. It's a two-phase separator. I mean, it is a vertical, but we can actually use the horizontal separator too. Okay, so it just uses gravity. For instance, your input is gas, oil, water. Now gas is oil and water is heavier. I mean, water is most heaviest, oil is intermediate, and gas is the lightest one. So what it says, like if you actually insert, and if there is some baffles actually inside here, and if when the actually fluid moves in, so what will happen, like the gas will be vented out. Okay, gas will be vented out and the water will be drained out. Okay, now here, since the since there is a lots of baffles inside, okay, so the fluid will be moving through like that, and so the most heaviest part of the water will be drained out, but immediate to that you will get the oils. Okay, now it's not only the one step, like for instance you have a series of a separator. Okay, so you have oil, gas, oil and water. The first separator, you just remove gas and you have oil plus water. Okay, then the second phase of separator, you have another separator. In there you remove oil, and then at the bottom you got the water. Okay, so this is how mostly we do here. All right, so this is how it works. But sometimes water, water is not emulsified with oil, but sometimes we use the same single separator to use. Like, for instance, we get gas, we get oil water emulsion, and the bottom we have the water to go out. Okay, we get gas to take out, but this oil water emulsion, we take it to another separator, and then we can actually separate to oil and water. All right, now you separate the oil and gas and the things, but sometimes these oil also have some water. We call it like the emulsified oil. So how we can actually use that? We can actually if the emulsions actually form, okay, so we can actually use some techniques and treatments to remove the emulsification. How we can actually do that? We have to use the demulsifier. Okay, it's a type of chemical treatment that actually used to make the water droplets merge or coalesce. Okay, and when they coalesce, it got bigger and bigger, and the water and the oil actually got separated. Okay, so this is how we can do that. Or also we can actually do the heat treatment. If you actually heat the whole solution at a certain portion of the temperature, then the water can be removed. Okay, but it depends on what is the constituent of the emulsification. But we also have a type of newer technology. You can use the electricity, and sometimes you can also use the acoustic technology with that too. Okay, to demulsify the coalescence. So this is how we can. The treatment with electricity is very simple, as you know. Like water is a polar. Okay, so it got like a water is like a dipole, like, okay, so it got positive and negatively charged, right? But like the oil, it's not polar at all. So I mean, it's more efficient to remove the use. If you use the static electricity, it's more efficient to remove the water particles from the oil. Okay, so the polar molecules rearrange themselves, and then it coalesces, and then it creates the large drop, settle down, and then you can settle it. Okay, I mean, you can actually remove it. Okay, so this is an emulsifier actually looks like, the heat treater, okay, and the electrostatic treater. This is how it actually look like. Okay, natural gas, let's come with that. Now, where and how the natural gas is processed, that depends on the type of oil, the content of the oil fluids, climatic condition, and the sales contract. Okay, how the sales contract comes in, we'll see that. So when you get the gas from the gas reservoir, there is a stack of separator, as I showed you. Okay, so the first thing, you have to separate the gas and oil. Okay, and then you get the gas, and from there you have to dehydrate the gas. Okay, remove the contaminants, remove the nitrogen, and also if there is a carbon dioxide, okay, so it would remove that. Sorry, the contaminants, there you actually remove the carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide and everything. Then you got the demethanizer. Okay, so demethanizer, you got the dry residue gas through the pipeline, and then you got the fractionator. And so what's happening, I mean, let's here is the mixture of oil and gas. Here you separate it, the condensate. Okay, so gas might have some oil inside. Okay, and that would be called condensate, or we can call it gas condensate. Okay, so condensates are a liquid portion, I mean the liquid presence in the gas. So the first thing you got to do, separate the condensate and the water. Okay, removing all the liquid portions, and then you hydrate it. How you dehydrate it. How you dehydrate it, there are several techniques we actually use. We use absorption or adsorption techniques. We'll actually see at the later slides. And when you actually dehydrate, okay, the water will be removed, and then what it actually contains, it contains natural gas plus portion of carbon dioxide plus hydrogen sulfide, plus like butane. Okay, so these are the things. Now natural gas means like methane and ethane. Okay, but also you can have butane and propane and many other, and some pentanes and some aromatics too. Okay, so we'll just remove these things, and nitrogen, of course. Now with this removal of contaminants, you will actually remove the hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxides, darts, for instance. Okay, now here you got gas, that means it contains methane, C1 to C4. Okay, methane, ethane, propane, butane, like that, plus nitrogen. So here you will actually extract the nitrogen. Nitrogen will go out, and here you got gas C1 to C4, and from here the demethanizer, and the work of the demethanizer is to remove the methane only, and then here you got the C2 to C4. Okay, and here you got the fractionator, it enters through the fractionator, and from here you got the outlet of C2, C3, C4, and sometimes C5. So all these can be compressed easily and sell at NGL. Okay, natural gas liquids. Okay, and here this dry gas, actually you can sell it to the pipeline, or you can also compress it and make LNG. Okay, and sell it to the customers. All right, so now you know how we actually do what are the steps of the natural gas processing units. Okay, so all are like the separators we have. Now hydrate, preventing hydrate formation. So what's happened in the reservoir, this is gas, and natural gas, it got oil and you also got the water. Okay, now the natural gas in here are in very high pressure, right? We know that. Now when the natural gas actually comes out, it got a huge portion, I mean a certain portion of water particles inside. Okay, and these water particles, what it can do when it go out, sometimes if it reach to a certain pressure and the temperature, okay, if the pressure and temperature in certain zone, like the pressure is low and also the temperature is low, in that point these waters, it can create a crystalline component that we call the clathorites. Okay, so these crystallines or these clathorites, it looks like a dirt snow. Okay, this is not snow, or this is not like, I mean, frozen, I mean, it's not like ice. Okay, this is something we called hydrate. So it got methane molecules attached with the water molecules. Okay, and typically this happens after the gas exit the well in the gathering lines, or like the even sometimes gas transmission pipelines also. Okay, it can block the flow of the gas. Now this is how the hydrates could be. It can totally block the gas. Okay, so how the hydrates actually works in. So this is the methane molecule with the hydrate clathorites. Okay, so this is the gas, some oil and water. These molecules can actually come, I mean, it's like a seed particle. Okay, and then it agglomerate with each other, and then it plug the zone. And mostly not at the straight pipeline with high pressure gas flow. It don't happen when there is any bend or like a T or a valve or any resistance in there. When the flow, natural flow, actually hampered, at that point this hydrate actually forms. Okay, now how we can actually prevent formation of hydrate? There are so many techniques actually. One of the technique is inject the antifreeze to lower the hydrate formation temperature. Okay, or you can actually heat the gas to remove the to prevent the agglomeration. Okay, or the best way is to remove the water. Okay, so this is how the hydrate actually can form. Now how you can actually remove the water or like the dehydration? So it besides causing hydrates, the water can also cause other problems. Okay, it can accelerate corrosion. Of course, water is the main source of the corrosion. It can reduce heating content of the natural gas. For instance, you got natural gas, okay, but natural gas also contains the water. So this water or like the vapor, okay, this will not burn. What you will also do, this when the natural gas will actually burn, this water molecule, it will actually absorb some heat, and then it will just reduce the efficiency, like reduce the heating value of the natural gas. Okay, so many pipelines will not buy gas, like the pipeline companies, they will not buy gas more than 7 pound of water per million cubic feet of gas. Remember that. Okay, so there are two different methods, as I explained, I mean told you before: absorption and adsorption. Okay, what is absorption? It is like you put a tower, just like the tower we have showed before here. Okay, and then you have a liquid desiccant or glycol, okay, that absorb the water vapor. Okay, and then you can actually recycle everything. Adsorption is like passing the gas in a solid desiccant, okay, which adheres the water. Now each method got its own advantage and disadvantage. Okay, the dry bed adsorption is more likely to be used in gas processing plant because it is less complicated, because in absorption you have to use the liquid glycol, which you need to remove the water again and recycle again. But in the case of dry absorption, it's really easy. You just use the packed bed. Okay, the reactor looks like that. It got a packed bed inside, so you put the gas, and it got some on pressure cycle, and after a cycle the gas, dry gas comes out, and the moisture actually trapped in. Okay, then we actually there's a regeneration time, so we actually heat it up again and remove the steam outside, remove the vapor outside, and then we use it that again. It's less complicated to use the adsorption technique. So this is how the absorption, the glycol liquid desiccant absorption unit actually looks like, and this is the working principle of the absorption unit. Okay, removal of contaminant, as we said, after removing the water particles, the most important part is the removing these contaminants. Why? Because if the carbon dioxide presents, then again the gas, it lose its heating value. Okay, and hydrogen sulfide is very, very bad for the gas transmission pipeline, because it's instigate corrosion, and also it is environmental unfriendly, and also it is bad for human health. Okay, so that's why we have to remove this product, because hydrogen sulfide is very poisonous and corrosive. Okay, so the sour gas means the presence of hydrogen sulfide. In most cases, actually, the natural gas which just come out from the reservoir are sour gas. Okay, that means it contains hydrogen sulfide. Then we have to remove the sulfur. Okay, and then we make it sweet. Okay, so the sweetening the gas means removing the hydrogen sulfide. And how you can remove it? Again, just like the water, we can use like two different techniques, absorption and adsorption techniques. Okay, the same process actually we use, but we use different types of the solvents and different types of the absorbents. Okay, there are some videos you can actually watch how the contaminants actually remove. Okay, please go through this video and watch this. Okay, how we actually remove the contaminants. Natural gas liquids. Well, natural gas is a mixture of, as I told you before, C1 to C4. Okay, and sometimes heavier can also present. Now we have to use a field separator to remove the natural gas liquid, to separate it, and these separators, like from C2 to C4, okay, that means ethane, propane and butane, we can easily liquefy it, and it known as NGL, or natural gas liquids, and the lowest temperature separation unit is used for that. Okay, so others like the C1 or methane, we can actually transport it through the pipeline, or we can convert it to LNG and sell it to the customer. All right, so this is all about the natural gas processing, the production. Now, crude oil. Let's come back to the crude oil. When we actually remove, you remember, we have the oil plus water plus gas, and then we separate it, and after separation we got oil, and then we get gas, and we get water. Now, what we should actually do with this oil? So at first we need to store this oil in a temporary stock tank. We call it tank farm or the tank battery. Okay, so this tank battery or tank farm, it holds 3 to 7 days of the production. In offshore platform, sometimes the offshore platform got direct pipeline. If it's near with the seashore, then it directly goes through the pipeline to the shore. Otherwise, we actually use the tankers, okay, or other different types of structures to transport it to the to the nearest refinery. All right. So this is all about the production part. Hopefully there will be no confusion because it's pretty much straightforward. So at today's class we actually learned quite a bit about like the production. So how the production actually works, how we use the net, I mean how we actually take out the reservoir fluids at the surface, and after we take it to the surface, yeah, the reservoir mechanisms like the natural, or if we have to use any enhanced recovery or artificial lift. And after recovery, after we get the reservoir fluids on the surface, how we actually treat these reservoir fluids. Okay, so we have discussed quite a bit, and hopefully you have no other confusion on this. So see you at the live lecture session, and at the live lecture session, if you still have any kind of confusion, any questions, I'll be answering all of this. Right, thank you very much, and have a good day to everyone. Goodbye.